And we hear the stories of the saints. We are inspired by their great deeds, and we wish to imitate, of course, their heroic faith in God. The task of our Catholic Church is to produce saints. The Beatitudes, which give us the clearest guide as to how to attain heaven and so journey towards the company of the saints. When we hear those Beatitudes, we are naturally drawn to them. We find that we want to live like this. We want to become peacemakers, or to be merciful to others, to hunger and thirst for what is right in the world. If we follow the Beatitudes in the example of so many saints, those we know to be saints by the decree of the Church, or those unsung heroes, maybe even an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent who now lives in heaven, we can be by their example and imitating them, realize that that is our goal also. The saints show us that holiness isn't made in heaven, it is worked out here on earth. You know, I asked our children from South Boston Catholic to think about the Feast of All Saints, and our children from our 4th grade at South Boston Catholic Academy join us today. And they've been working on a class project. Each of them chose a saint to research, and I've invited them to celebrate Mass with us today, and they all agreed to dress up in the saint that they chose to research. And they look great, don't they? I also asked them what interested them or intrigued them about the saint they chose. Now, I can read a few of them. We probably can't read all of them, but I'd like to read a few of them as we celebrate this Mass today. So Amelia, she picked St. Cecilia. And St. Cecilia, she said, is famous because at her wedding, she sang in her heart to the Lord, and she's the patron saint of music. And then Giovanna chose St. Caterina Tecawitha, and she is famous for being the first indigenous saint, and she's the patron saint of ecology. Matthew, he chose St. Michael the Archangel, and Matthew said that he led an army of angels in a war against the devil, and he also won against the devil. He's the patron saint of police. And he chose that saint because he said, my parents got me a chain of St. Michael for communion, first communion, and I thought it would be cool to choose the leader of the angels. And then Lucy, she chose St. Lucy because she wanted to be a nun, but her mother did not want her to be. Not Lucy, not you, Lucy, but St. Lucy, right? But you might be a nun someday. So people punished her, she said, and took her eyes out. And when she died, her eyesight came back and she could see. And she was the patron saint of blindness. And she chose that saint, of course, because that is her name, Lucy, a beautiful name. And Ronan picked St. Sebastian. St. Sebastian, he said, is most famous for his death, where he was shot with arrows because he believed in Christ. That didn't kill him, he said, but when he went back to Rome, he got beat to death. Poor guy, huh? But he is the patron saint of athletes, and he chose him because he likes sports. And Vincent chose St. Ignatius of Loyola, and he was a soldier, Vincent said, who was hurt and had to go into the hospital. And all he could do while he was in the hospital is read the Bible. So he is the patron saint of spiritual retreats, soldiers, and education. And Lucy, another Lucy here today, chose St. Lucy also, and she's the same. She's famous because she's the patron saint of the blind. William chose a new saint that is about to be named a saint, of course. He's a blessed. William chose Blessed Carlo Acutis. And he made websites for churches, but he died of cancer at the age of 15. And he is the saint of computer programmers. And I asked him why he chose that saint, and he says, because Mrs. Taylor recommended him. And then Jake chose St. Peter. St. Peter is famous because Jesus gave him the keys to the church, and he's the patron saint of fishermen and shipbuilders. And Natalia picked Natalia of Nicodema. And Natalia and her husband, St. Adrian, were forced to deny God, but they said no because they will always believe in God, and he's the patron saint of epilepsy. And Anush picked St. John Paul II. My saint is famous, Anush says, for his work as a Catholic pope, and he helped end World War II. And he's the patron saint of World Youth Day. And Mason picked St. Anthony because he was devoted to helping the poor and the sick. Jack picked St. Francis of Assisi because he can tame animals, and he's the patron saint of animals. And Brendan chose St. Brendan, his own name. He's famous because he was one of the 12 apostles of Ireland. And Sophia picked St. Therese of Lisieux. She is famous for becoming a nun at the age of 15, and she is the patron of the missions and the florist. Well, we got them all in, and I hope that those were great boys and girls. We're so proud of you researching these saints. Whatever our age is, whether we're 4th grade or whether we're 80 years old, each of us has a brighter future and can become a saint that God calls each one of us to be.